lost in the beauty of the mountain ranges. As young souls shared their love in their Garden of Eden, Ig and Maren were like any other couple in the world. They were young, filled with love, and full of life. Together, they completely doted on one another. As they lay down under the shadows of a tree, they continuously cherished one another. Love could be seen oozing from them. However, something was quite off with Maren. In her eyes, she may hold some secrets that would taunt and hunt their relationship. Like any sweet dream, that peaceful and passionate atmosphere of young love, which enveloped the two lovebirds, had come to an end. Drunk and in the lowest state of his life, Ignatius Parrish lay on the floor, wasted and deflated. Slowly stirring awake from the sweet dream of his, he got up to face another day in the mortal hell. One thing is for sure, he was not the same Iggy his peers knew. He lacked the will to live. Like the spark keeping him alive was completely drained from him. He was messy, didn't even care what he looked like, with booze in his mind. Choosing a record from his collection, he neared the phonograph and mellowed under the loud music resonating from it. It was loud enough to momentarily elevate his grief and mourning of the tragedy he had experienced. As the music flowed and carried his mind to the sweet time of youth love, he reminisced the time he spent with the love of his life. He remembered how beautiful Maren was under the golden ray of light pecking its way from the window. What a sight she was, dancing so elegantly, with her soft curves and fair skin beautifully complemented by the pink voile and sunshine. Indeed, what an immaculate sight she was. Iggy couldn't stop missing her so much more. As he finished reminiscing the past and opened his curtains, he was met with a mob of angry crowds. Reporters scattered across his lawn, and all of them were screaming at him, accusing him of murder. Ig exited his house, causing the mob to flock around him. They bombarded him with questions, asking how he could have escaped murder and accusing him of being the devil himself. He then fled the place, leaving the crowd angst about the case. On his way to his folks' place, he called his lawyer/best friend Lee to meet up with him there. During the drive, the group of reporters would not stop their pursuit of Ig in hopes of getting the scoop that would boost their careers. As he arrived home, he sarcastically shouted at his mother, Lydia, she should be proud his son was famous now. The mother could only ask him to come inside for supper. At dinner, the whole family was there. Ig's father, Derek, begged him to stay on a low profile to ensure his safety, and even recommended changing lawyers for the fast proceeding and clearing of his name. But Ig was determined to fight for the truth. He was innocent and had nothing to find. Feeling defeated, his parents encouraged him that whatever happened, they had his back. Unlike what they expected, this angered Iggy more. He felt betrayed, hurt that his parents thought he had the guts to deprive his love of his life. He left them dumbfounded and went to their porch. Ig's older brother, Terry, excused himself to go after his little brother. Playing a soft tone from his trumpet, he approached Ig and tried to console his aching heart. As they were casually catching up, Lee, the lawyer friend, arrived. Ig immediately bombarded the lawyer with questions one after the other. Ig asked how the laboratory where the samples taken from Maren's dead body burned to the ground. He also inquired about this new witness who was spreading false accusations against him. Lee could only do little and would look for evidence soon. Iggy was on edge, but Lee reassured him, believing Iggy could not do such an act. Ig, however, corrected his presumption, saying he was capable of murdering the man who did this to Maren. Iggy went to the local pub to distress and unwind from all the happening. However, as he entered the place, the bar owner was displeased with Ig coming to his place. Fortunately, a childhood friend of his was a bartender there, Glenna. She poured him a drink, which Ig was grateful for. He was grateful that a friend was there to assist him during his struggle. As they talked, it was imminent Glenna was hitting on Ig, clearly interested in getting some action. But Ig bluntly refused, insisting he was better off alone. At nightfall, a group of mobs gathered in the forest, all with candles, and silently approaching the place of their mourning. They were the townspeople who were very fond of Maren and mourned her death. They gathered at the scene of the crime, the place that witnessed Ig and Maren's love and downfall. As they gathered, shared prayers, and offered tribute, they rekindled the times Maren was still with them. Maren's father, Dale, offered his message, saying he missed his beloved daughter and how angry and disappointed he was with Ig. He couldn't believe how the man he treated as his son could do such horrid things to his beloved daughter. He wished for Ig's fast capture, and the justice Maren deserved. Unbeknownst to them, Ig was up in the treehouse, hiding as he listened to the crowd. Only Glenna was the one who noticed he was up there. When the tribute came to an end, Ig exited the treehouse. He watched over the ornaments laminated around the tree. It held tons of Maren's pictures, making him remember as if she was there. Angered, he threw the liquor onto the trunk of the tree. But this was far from enough to cool down his head. Meeting face to face with the statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary, his anger doubled. He kicked the figure, smashing it to bits, with anger overflowing from him. Feeling uncontented for what he had done, he peed on the offerings left for Maren. Glenna came back to the treehouse, finding Ig doing such horrid things. She was worried he would be found by the group, likely to cause a riot amongst the crowd. But Ig was still furious. He blamed God for what happened to Maren, asking how he let her die there alone and helpless. She consoled the already drunk Ig, guiding him out of there, and together they left the place. Ig could not help but feel the world was unfair. The townspeople only thought of him as the devil. If he could not change their presumption of him, then he should be the devil this town thought he was. The next day, Ig and Glenna were in the same bed, getting some action from last night's heat. What Ig didn't notice was the sudden growth of horns. These horns were slowly protruding from his head as he regained consciousness. Getting up, he went to the bathroom to freshen up. There, he noticed the protruding horns and was shocked by this sudden revelation. Moments later, he exited the room, still feeling confused and shocked. In the living room, Glenna had finally awoken from her slumber and was currently enjoying some donuts. She was momentarily surprised by the sudden horn growth as well, but rather, she was more amused over them. Her comment of joking about the horns put anxiety in Ig, but Glenna was acting quite suspicious. She was asking Ig random questions such as wanting more of the donuts and asking his permission if she could have them. When he gave his permission, she ate one but almost threw up. But instead of stopping, she asked again if she could have more. Ig then asked why she would want another donut if she did not like it. But Glenna objected, saying she wanted to get fat and no one would ever care about her. Ig opposed this, but Glenna was certain, saying if she was appealing then Ig would have slept with her without even getting drunk. Glenna then asked once more if she could have another donut, to which Ig agreed, feeling pissed off by their weird conversation. He even said Glenna could feast on them. With this, Glenna acted somewhat like a pig, scoffing off the donuts like an animal. Ig felt uneasy seeing her sudden change in demeanor. He then excused himself to go to the hospital to check his condition. At the hospital, a child and her mother were at the waiting desk when Ig arrived. She was screaming frantically, banging on the toys provided for her to play with. The mother could only hush her child silently. Unfortunately, the kid continued with her tantrums. Ig just went straight to the nurse in charge, asking if the doctor could check on him. He showed his horns to her, momentarily shocking the nurse as well. She then asked Ig to fill up the form for the diagnosis. Thus, he went to sit near the mother to do so. Once seated, the child was still throwing a fit like nobody's business, causing such a ruckus. Even if Ig was annoyed, he minded his own business and continued filling up the form. The mother suddenly talked to Ig about wanting to kick her toddler's spoiled little bum. She was not even ashamed of asking Ig if she could do this. Of course, Ig was appalled by her sudden words, flatly saying she cannot do that to her child. The mother then continued saying she wanted to leave her toddler and divorce her husband. She didn't stop there, though, continuing to share about her passionate time with her black golf instructor. Couldn't take what the mother was saying. Ig went straight to the nurse. When Ig finally approached the nurse and handed the form to her, she suddenly expressed her urge to scold the mother for letting her child's tantrums continue. Asking for Ig's permission, she proposed to shout and shame the mother for raising such a spoiled child. When Ig nonchalantly agreed, the nurse smiled and immediately shouted at the lady, asking if she could leave the hospital with that spoiled daughter she had. The woman was angry, banging at the nurse's protective glass, asking for a fight. Ig neared the lady, not wanting for a scene to break in the hospital. When they made contact, flashes of images of the lady's unfaithfulness came crashing into Ig's vision. He saw how the lady and her instructor screwed each other. The worst part was her child witnessed it all. When the contact ended, Ig was perplexed by what had happened. Seeing the child, she suddenly voiced her hatred for her mother. Now, away from the chaos outside, Ig was getting his vitals for the checkup. As another younger nurse attended to his vitals, she too was acting out of character. She shared how she caught her boyfriend's unfaithfulness and her plans of taking revenge. Feeling uncomfortable, Ig was glad the doctor came to his rescue. The doctor asked about his condition, asking what was wrong with his sudden visit to the hospital. Ig was confused, asking why they were not concerned over the horns growing out of his head. Ig asked for treatment to fix him, but the doctor constantly got sidetracked and even spilled all his darkest secret. Couldn't take all the pressure any longer. Ig asked for the doctor to chop those horns off. Seeing the huge knife with the doctor, Ig was reluctant to partake in the operation. But the doctor reassured him, giving him gas anesthesia to calm and put him to sleep. As he slowly let himself slumber, he dreamed of the past. There, he saw the young Marin Williams in the church where they first met. She had this cross around her neck, reflecting the light and using it to convey a Morse code to young Ignatius Parrish. That was the start of their pure young love, a sweet cliché love at first sight romance. After the mass, like the most intentional plot in every drama, little Marin left her cross for the young Ig to find. The next day, the group of friends, Ig, Terry, Glenna, Lee, and the chubby boy Eric were out in the lake to do their routine mischievous deeds. They had with them a pile of stuff to blow up with the use of a cherry bomb. One after the other, they blow up things, excitingly laughing and enjoying themselves. When they were to blow up a whole chicken, Ig was also busy discussing with his friends his fated meeting with the mystery girl from church. Indeed, the young Ig had a crush on the fair maiden. Eric couldn't stop joking about how shocked he was that Ig had a crush on a girl, thinking the boy was gay. This caused a sour face from Glenna, rhetorically asking the boys if they hadn't met a girl in their lives, intending for them to notice her. But they just jokingly laughed at her and continued their fun. Glenna was annoyed by this. As planned, after filling up the chicken with a lit cherry bomb, they ran for cover. As they waited for the explosion, nothing came which disappointed the group. Eric, the boy who bought the cherry bomb, volunteered to go near the piece of meat and relight the explosive. But before he could come close to it, it exploded into shreds of meat, with chicken guts splatting on his body. The gang laughed out loud at Eric's mishap. They were beyond amused because of their friend, but young Eric was pissed off. When the gang wanted to blow some more things up, Eric refused, saying he had other plans for the last cherry bomb. Eric stated the only reason he would give up his cherry bomb was if someone would ride on the pushcart, strip themselves, and slide down the log ramp. Rather than getting scared and discouraged, Ig was more determined to get the last cherry bomb. And that's when Ig steps in, volunteering to do anything in exchange for the last cherry bomb. Thus, he agreed to this silly play. As Ig came crashing into the pile of floating logs, the logs came crashing onto one another. This blocked Ig from resurfacing and catching air to breathe in. His friends were very worried about him, praying that he would be all right. Fortunately, Lee came to the rescue, diving into the water to save Ig. They then resurfaced, clearly exhausted from the battle with death. From then on, Ig was grateful to Lee for saving his life. As their friends near the two, Ig couldn't stop but ask Eric for the cherry bomb. The boy tried to protest, saying Ig didn't follow the rules by not undressing, but Glenna had enough of the drama. And finally, the last cherry bomb was now in Ig's possession. Now, in Lee's little makeshift workshop, the two talked about Ig's crush. What Ig didn't expect was for Lee to also catch feelings for the young red-haired maiden. Lee then volunteered to return the necklace himself. After all, he was the one who fixed it. But Ig was stubborn, wanting to be the one to return it. Panic and jealousy were dancing in his eyes. Seeing the hostility in Ig's eyes, Lee admitted defeat and didn't push his luck. He then asked what he would get in return for fixing the necklace. Ig then dug into his bag to take the cherry bomb out. This piece of work was then used by Ig as payment for fixing the broken necklace. Now in his room, he kept thinking about the beauty as he was mesmerized by the necklace. This was his last ticket of ever meeting with the mystery girl, a chance for them to talk together. He then proceeded into studying Morse code, curious as to what the girl had messaged him before. The next Sunday, Ig dared to go and face little Marin. With him was the fixed necklace in his hands, and like the charming prince, he presented it to his princess. Like any romantic, Marin exposed her nape to Ig, implying for Ig to put her necklace for her. Like the gentleman little Ig was, he slowly slid the chain around her neck. Afterward, they went outside for a walk leisurely. There, they talked about Marin's necklace, how she got it from her mother and how she died from cancer. Little Marin was still sour about the topic, so they talked about other things to pass the time. As Marin thanked Ig for fixing her necklace, Terry suddenly came running out of nowhere. With him was bad news of Lee's accident. The cherry bomb accidentally exploded on the poor boy's hand, causing him to lose 2 of his fingers. But despite the bad news, Lee was happy that Marin had received her fixed necklace. Now, in the middle of the woods, Ig was guiding Marin amongst the shrubs and greenery. Marin was filled with curiosity as she followed him. Ig then showed her a hidden treehouse, the place that would be dear to their hearts. Marin was speechless as she took in the scene right before her eyes. The place was majestic and she loved it. They went up the treehouse, feeling themselves at home. From then on, that place would be their hideout in secret Eden. Unbeknownst to them, Terry was watching over the two, but soon left and didn't bother them. Ig showed Marin every corner of the place, and she loved the place even more as she knew more about Ig in the process. But Ig couldn't hide the fact about her necklace. He confessed the truth, still afraid that if Lee had returned the necklace, then he would not have the chance to talk with Marin. But she reassured Ig, saying she left the necklace on purpose for him to find. Fast forward to the current time. The two had grown up together, enjoying their sweet time in their secret Eden. As Marin seductively danced under the sunlight, Ig couldn't feel but be tempted by her soft swaying. He neared her, passionately kissing her, as he slowly made sweet love to his beloved and precious girl. As Ig slowly immersed himself in that sweet dream of his, he slowly awoke. Still feeling woozy from the anesthesia, he was shocked out of his mind to see a huge knife stuck on his horn. He slowly took it off, scared to his very core. When he was slowly getting sober, he saw the doctor and nurse banging each other right next to him. It angered him to his very core, seeing how irresponsible the two were. He hurriedly left the bed, neared a mirror, and saw in his reflection how his horns had grown exponentially. Ig then visited the local pastor, who was currently tending the graves. When he called out for the priest, it shocked him to see the horns of the devil ornamenting Ig's head. He was afraid, asking Ig to leave him be. But Ig was determined to find answers on how he could get rid of the horns. However, the pastor firmly stated he couldn't do a thing. What was happening to Ig was the result of him slaying innocent Marin. It was a punishment sent by the heaven above. The priest believed Ig was accursed to be just like the devil, like a fallen angel banished to crawl the earth like a snake. Ig was pissed off, denying there was no way out. He asked the priest what he had to do to make this all stop. When the priest was giving Ig some suggestions, his demeanor slowly changed. Like the others, he was acting out of the ordinary. Now, by the port, Lee was enjoying himself with a sandwich. Ig then came running, frantically explaining to Lee the weird happenings in the town lately. He presumed all of this was thanks to the sudden growth of his horns. But Lee couldn't catch up with what Ig was saying. He told Ig that he could not see the horns he was talking about. Ig then presumed maybe his horns would not work on good guys like Lee. Lee tried to laugh these off, suggesting Ig was under the influence, imagining it all. But with a heavy heart and sarcasm, Ig stated that if this was all in his head, then maybe he did pass out, totally drunk, and took Marin's life. Ig left to the comfort of his parents' home. He went straight to his mother to ask for strength and guidance. When he found her in his parents' room, his mother was worried about seeing his son in such a shape. She hugged him tightly, like a loving mother. But Ig was startled when the lady asked for her son to go far away. She continued saying she doesn't want to hear about her son's problems and her wish of holding her breath until Ig was gone. Ig forced his mother to breathe, asking her what was wrong. But she didn't stop her rants, asking her son to leave far away from home. What was even absurd was her confession of being unhappy when Ig was around. Feeling defeated, Ig went to his father. He now realized that the horns had something to do with the weird behavior of everyone he met up with. He directly confronted his father about any grouch he has for Ig. Now, his father, in all honesty, was disappointed with Ig. In his eyes, Ig was a problem child whom he couldn't find a connection with. He was also angry about the crime Ig had done, believing Ig was guilty of what he did to poor Maren. He even confessed he was the one who asked for the laboratory to be burned down just to save his son's face, to which Ig was furious. Derek felt betrayed and an accomplice of the wrong, making Ig more anxious about him. And finally, he admitted to his son the love he had for Maren, saying Maren was the best thing about Ig. Indeed, he was disappointed with what Ig had done. As Ig drove away from his folks' place, he couldn't stop but rant to Lee about what was going on. He told Lee everything and the truth about his father's involvement in the laboratory getting on fire. Now, Lee offered to give his house keys so Ig could relax from all the drama. But Ig was persistent. With his newfound powers, he was determined to find justice for Maren. Now at the local bar, Ig planned to ask around and see if any one of them had anything to say about the accident. But before he could get in, the mob of reporters once again bombarded him with questions. Ig tried to prove whether his hunch was right, so what he made these entire people do was beyond him. He said, whoever wins against their all-out brawl, that reporter would get an exclusive interview from Ig himself. And with his final say, the fight for the career-boosting interview began. Every one of them was under a spell, with the focus of taking the opposition down. On the other hand, Ig was enjoying himself, greatly pleased about all of this. Like the devil Ig portrayed, he walked to the pub with almighty confidence. Inside, all were amazed to see him and his magnificent horns, walking like he owned the place. The manager was the first to spat anger at Ig, asking him to leave. Ig then asked for him to cool off, needed this time and place to get information about Maren. When he asked the crowd for the information, a moment of silence was bestowed upon Ig. Later on, one after the other, some of them gave him nothing but irrelevant info. But one caught his attention, and it was a guy named Stan. He stated how the waitress from the diner Ig and Maren went to last time, saw everything, and was the new secret witness. Feeling contented, Ig left the place, moments after the manager out his pub ablaze. As Ig escaped, he was like the devil himself emerging from the smoke. Still fighting outside were the group of reporters, but Ig didn't pay attention to them. And with that, he was off to the diner. In his car, as Ig opened the compartment, he took out a small box containing the engagement ring he prepared for Maren. Soon, a flashback of his supposed proposal flooded his mind. Ig was very excited about the engagement, with a picture-perfect plan in his hands. He planned to meet up with Maren in the diner, ask the big question, and hopefully go out to celebrate and have a good time. As Ig arrived at the diner, it was raining and cold, but you could see the expectations in his eyes and the undeniable happiness in them. He immediately went to Maren, kissed her, and asked if everything was fine. But unlike Ig, Maren was solemn and not talking. She then let out a sudden bombshell at Ig, saying she was moving out to Los Angeles. At first, Ig was excited, thinking the two would go out in the world and find new lands to call their own. But Maren was firm, she was going there, alone. She wanted to break things up with Ig and go far away. But Ig was furious and confused. How could they fall out like this? Ever since they were kids, they talked about their future together and how they will have many kids to spoil. Ig was hurt, asking Maren what went wrong. But Maren only said they had to see other people for them to know if they were meant to be together. This angered Ig, asking if Maren had fallen in love with someone else. Her averting her gaze was enough of Ig to lose in paranoia. Before Ig could make a scene, Maren stood up, ready to leave. With pleading eyes, Maren left Ig there, and all he could do was watch. Angered, he screamed at the people in the diner and left a tip in the place. Terry was outside, excited about the supposed celebration. But the sourness in Ig's face was proof that there was no happy ending like they anticipated it would be. Ig left the place in a hurry, leaving Terry, Maren, and some of the folks there dumbfounded. All Maren could do was watch as Ig sped off far away. The next morning, Ig was inside his car, drunk and asleep. The cops suddenly arrived and tapped on his window, asking to talk. They asked what he did last night and his prior engagement with Maren. Sensing that something may had happened, Ig burst out in tears, saying all of this happened because of him, and that was taken by the authorities as a confession to the crime. Now, back in reality, Ig continued staring at the ring before driving off to the diner. There, he saw how the seductive waitress tried to seduce her customers. When she neared Ig, he immediately asked her what she said to the cops. There, the woman stated all these false accusations about Ig, saying he forced Maren to go with him and then did the wrong. Ig confronted the lady, asking how she had the guts to say such lies. But with every confidence, she admitted to Ig her desire to be on the television, being the star of his court trial. As Ig couldn't take her lies, he left to see his brother to get answers. Terry was currently working as a musician and was rocking the crowd. They loved his performance, enjoying every moment of it. Indeed, Terry was very gifted and musically inclined. Ig sat at the bar island, waiting for Terry to finish. Surprisingly, Glenna was present in the club. She neared Ig and they talked about what happened during the day. As their talk progressed, they end up talking about Glenna's desire of leaving their hometown. Hearing this, Ig encouraged her to do so, but she had mixed emotions about the move. She voiced out her love for Ig, saying she had been since they were kids. But Ig pushed Glenna's feelings, saying she should follow her wish of leaving and not think about him. After their talk, Ig went with Terry outside. As Ig waited, he saw a slithering snake by the bank near him, but he was distracted by Terry's arrival. When Terry and he came face to face, Terry was beyond surprised to see the horns on Ig's head. Ig just dismissed his shock and talked about what happened in the diner. He informed Terry of the false accusation the waitress was spatting, saying how he was the last one with Marin. But Terry corrected this, saying he was the one who took Marin away. With this sudden revelation, Ig was on edge to know more about the truth. He punched Terry, kicking him so hard and demanding to know it all. He pinned him down, and with the sudden contact, traces of that night's event came flooding into Ig's mind. Ig is now seeing the events of that night. There, he saw Marin and Terry together in his car, riding somewhere in the middle of the rain. As the two talked, Marin was very uneasy about what happened. She politely asked Terry to park the car, saying she had to leave. Outside, Terry was repeatedly asking for Marin to come back, but she insisted, and then into the woods. Terry then went in his car, smoked a little, and dozed off to sleep. When he woke up the very next day, he was startled at the revelation of blood on his hands and the possession of a bloody stone on his passenger seat. Panicked, he went looking for Marin, afraid something could have happened to her, and his fears were confirmed. He saw the lifeless Marin laying on the cold dirt and pale. Afraid of getting involved in murder, Terry immediately left the place, took off his blood-stained shirt, and wrapped the stone in it. She threw it into the waters, hoping for no one to find out. Back to reality, Ig was angrier about what happened. He felt betrayed because Terry didn't help solve Marin's case. Seeing the commotion, the cops were called to take away Ig to stop the fighting. As Eric the cop handcuffed Ig, he was stating how he wished to get this over with and for Ig to be imprisoned already. As Eric continued to express his hatred for Ig, the other cop motivated him, saying sensual comments that both of them liked. Of course, this weirded out Ig, but he couldn't protest, and thus, he was sent off to prison. The next morning, Ig was getting bailed out by Lee. Ig even provoked Eric by asking if he can take him back to prison. Of course, the two cops would just be waiting for that day. Lee then confessed his findings to Lee, talking about the waitress, and Terry is the last one seen with Marin. Of course, Lee was shocked to know how Ig gathered this information in a record-breaking time. Ig insisted that all of this was thanks to the horns on him, but Lee continued to deny the existence of these horns. Ig then noticed Lee wearing Marin's signature cross, with shock on his face. Of course, Lee tried to deny this, but Ig was certain it was Marin's. Ig then had a painful realization. He believed Marin was cheating on him with Lee. To make things worse, Lee admitted this, saying they didn't want to hurt Ig, so they had to keep it a secret. Anger fueling up within him, Ig left Lee before he could do anything to him. Ig was crying as he drove off. Hurt and betrayal were consuming him. He cussed out loud, in hopes of releasing some of his anger. He then remembered Lee was always with them every hangout. Of course, it was not impossible for the two to not have fallen for one another, whom he believed in. Ig went to Marin's place, in hopes of talking to her father. There, Dale greeted him with a gun in his hands. He asked for Ig to leave before he could do something they both would regret. Ig asked if Marin had ever mentioned anything about leaving him. Dale was livid for Ig thinking about this. He then defended his daughter, saying Marin had never been unfaithful to Ig in their relationship. He went on, saying his wish of Ig getting the karma he deserved for hurting his beloved daughter. He too hoped for Ig to face an end equally befitting of his sin. Ig couldn't take Dale's hurtful comments, so he left the place. As Ig drove off, in the middle of the road was a snake crawling its way, and that was the start of the manifestation of snakes in that town. Ig was in a secluded place, with the plan of taking his horns off. In the middle of his agony, he noticed the snakes nearing his spot. Like any sane and fearful man, he took a pitchfork nearby to defend himself. But he was stunned to see the snake slithering its way up to his shoulders. With his newfound friendship with these reptiles, Ignatius Parrish formed a plan to avenge Marin. His first order of business is to take care of the seductive waitress. He was going to show her that what she did was unforgivable. As a payback, Ig ordered his slithering friends to ambush the woman unknowingly in her car. When she discovered Ig was outside, that's when the snakes attacked. They bite her, damaging her beauty, serving as a reminder not to mess with Ig Parrish. After he dealt with the waitress, Ig went home. There, he met up with Eric and his partner. Before they could talk to Ig, he ordered them to do their deepest desires. And with that, the two cops shared their fantasies of being together, how it was time for them to be true to themselves. Thus, Ig left the two to do their own business. As Ig entered the house, he saw Terry was busy in the living room. When Terry invited him to join him for a drink, Ig kindly refused but encouraged Terry to continue with his plans. He then took out numerous scaring Ig for his brother's safety. Terry defended himself, saying he couldn't stand being sober after what happened to Marin. Their talk then progressed too fast, with Ig praising Terry for being such a great big brother, to him resenting Terry for leaving Marin to perish. Of course, Terry tried to defend himself, afraid that he would be arrested as a suspect in the crime. Ig was livid, asking his brother why he didn't defend him, and why he ran away. Indeed, Terry was to blame for all of this. But Terry became emotional, saying he could not do that to his brother. He was afraid that if he tried to intervene, it would seem like he was helping Ig. But Ig was not convinced by this, saying Terry was only saving himself. Broken, Terry smiled painfully, admitting to his brother that he was right and that he was the evil one. He proposed to Ig that he would be good off slayed by him. But Ig proposed something more painful to Terry. He wanted him to finish all the substance he had. It shocked Terry, knowing full well what would happen to him if he did so. But Ig was persistent, determined for Terry to continue. And like a puppet, one by one Terry consumed the goods. At first, he was totally fine, but as he became aggressive in consuming them, he slowly lost himself. Soon, his vision and mind were clouded, resulting in hallucinations. Scared and shaking, Terry was beyond afraid and guilty. He was screaming, begging for forgiveness, as he imagined himself getting swallowed by the earth beneath him. Back in the lake, Ig was silently staring at the vastness of the water. He was contemplating what he had done to his brother, but he believed what he did was the right thing to do. Moments later, Lee arrived at the port, nearing the unfazed Ig. Lee called out to Ig, informing him of his arrival. Ig tried to push Lee away, not wanting to do something the both of them would regret. But Lee was persistent, angering Ig in the process. Ig then asked how long had Marin and he been in a relationship behind his back, wanting to know the depths of their relationship. Lee confessed they'd been going out for months, saying Marin's plans of moving to California. Ig then asked if Lee thought he did end Marin because they were splitting up. But Lee believed in him, saying Ig could not do such a thing. When Lee tried to touch Ig, he pushed him away, anger centered on Lee. He then proceeded in taking Marin's necklace off Lee. Lee can see the horns attached to Ig. Indeed, he was surprised. Now, the horn's abilities were in effect on him. With this knowledge, Ig asked Lee for the whole truth, but what he found out was beyond him. Lee confessed to murdering poor Marin. Both shocked and angered, Ig attacked Lee. Ig asked how he could have done that. Lee simply expressed his desires for Marin, saying they should have been together if it weren't for Ig being in the picture. Using Ig's ability to see his victim's past, he entered Lee's memories of that night. He saw Marin and Lee talking at that very spot. Marin expressed her assumption of Ig's planned proposal and her dissatisfaction with this. She asked for Lee's presence that night, saying with him, everything would turn out fine. Lee misunderstood her, reading Marin's actions wrongly. That night, as expected, Ig proposed and Marin cold-heartedly turned him down. Lee saw Marin drive off with Terry, so he went after them. When he arrived at where Marin ran off to, he followed her towards the woods. When they met, Lee tried to take Marin home, but she wanted to be left alone for the moment. Thus, Lee tried comforting her instead. As they hugged, soaked in the rain, Marin could only cry her heart out. When Marin was slowly calming herself down, Lee made the move of kissing her. She was shocked, not expecting the sudden contact, and pushed Lee away. Lee tried to correct himself, clarifying that there was no need for them to hide their love anymore. But Marin kept pushing him away, disliking the thought of any sensual contact with him. Lee apologized, saying he couldn't stop himself. Marin clarified to Lee that what he was doing was wrong. They were friends, and she doesn't like what he was doing. Lee then asked indirectly if the two did break up because of him. This appalled Marin, saying she would never do such a thing to Ig. She could never betray the man she loved all her life. Ig then got back to reality, now knowing parts of the truth. Lee then used this opportunity to get back at Ig. He smashed a huge steel chain on his back, causing Ig to crash onto the ground. He continued fighting Ig, narrating that night's recollection as he goes. With bubbling anger in him, Lee hurt and forced himself onto Marin. He hadn't had enough and did the unthinkable to Marin. Her protesting could not do a thing. When Marin bit him, he took a rock and bashed it onto Marin's head. That's how she slowly withered to cold. Lee was on a rampage, hitting Ig without any signs of stopping. He was too hard on him, hitting him blow one after the other. He reminisced of that night, seeing how Marin slowly perished. He cleaned after the evidence and took Marin's cross with him. And there, he left her dying. Lee then planted the murder weapon onto Terry to cover up the tracks of his crimes. Now, Lee dragged the battered Ig inside his car, took out a gallon of flammable gas and poured it into the car and Ig himself. With the match in his hand, Lee didn't bat his eyes as he put Ig ablaze. Screaming in pain, Ig tried to escape the burning vehicle but was stopped by Lee himself. All Ig could do was turn on the vehicle and drive straight into the open water. There, his vehicle dove straight in, signifying the end of Ignatius Parish. On the news later that day was the presumed suicide of Ig, with Lee as the witness. He reported that Ig confessed to him, and later ended himself because of the guilt. Ig's parents and Terry could only listen to the news, brokenhearted by the death of their loved one. Just then, from the depths of the water, Ig resurfaced. As a result of being burned alive, he was left with major burns all over his body and face. Still, Ig was back on his feet, a devil that was hard to put an end to. He went straight to Marin's place, seeking Dale's guidance. Seeing the walking and not death Ig, Dale was not surprised. He voiced out again his desire for Ig to go away. But when he heard the news on the television, he was not satisfied. Ig then swore he was not the one who hurt Marin. This time, Dale somewhat believed in Ig, clarifying if he knew who did it. When Ig nodded his head, Dale asked for the man's name. But Ig was determined to put an end to this on his own. This was his fight for Marin's justice. Seeing Ig's determination, Dale invited him in. Inside Marin's room, Dale took a key Marin left for Ig. He gave it to him, saying he had to keep it. Ig then tried to return Marin's cross to Dale, but the latter refused. He believed Marin would love for Ig to have it so she could be with him all the time. As Ig wore the necklace, his appearance gradually changed. His horns slowly retraced, as the burned flesh completely healed on its own. Indeed, it was like a miracle happened, which Ig was eternally grateful for. He went to their secret hideout, determined to find the last piece of the puzzle. He now believed the horns were not a curse, but a blessing that helped him to see the truth. With Marin's cross with him, he could feel her warmth protecting him from all the evil. Now, arriving at this place, Ig had to face the whole truth at once. He could sense Marin as she climbed up the treehouse, ushering him to proceed. There, he opened the secret compartment, and in there was the last letter Marin left for him. Hidden inside a box was the last gift he would receive from Marin. It contained a letter that held Marin's reasons, the whole truth of what was going on. She wrote everything in Morse code, the language that connected the both of them. It stated her reasons for not wanting to marry Ig because of her cancer. She was afraid that if Ig knew about cancer, the more he would be eager to get married, and she would be weak into saying yes. She was afraid Ig would suffer the same fate her father did with her mom. The thought broke Marin's heart, imagining her Ig suffering because of her. Thus, she resorted to breaking up with Ig, hurting him to break things easier. She hoped that one day, Ig would learn to forgive her and find someone who deserved his love. She wished for Ig to grow old and meet with him someday in a treehouse, waiting for his return with open arms. Ig cried his heart out, reading Marin's farewell and love. Back at the hospital, Ig visited the now recuperating Terry. Terry was startled, happy, and confused his brother was still alive. Ig neared him, preventing him from straining himself. Terry immediately voiced out his desire to clear Ig's name, saying they are to find the man who did the crime. But Ig's sudden revelation of Lee's crime stopped Terry. He volunteered to help in putting an end to Lee's treachery, but Ig opposed, concerned about his brother's health. But Terry was determined to stand up for his younger brother. He was now ready to help Ig by any means possible. Like a brother's intuition, the two nodded their heads in agreement. Ig just wished for his brother's safety, worried about their parents. In the early morning at Lee's residence, as he looked outside, he was shocked to see Ig. He approached the unharmed Ig, who was casually leaning on one of Lee's cars. He voiced out his surprise, which Ig nonchalantly responded to. Lee tried to invite Ig inside, but Ig had other plans, asking if they could go somewhere. Lee could not do anything but follow pursuit. The two went into the woods, to the place where everything started. Lee meekly followed Ig, curious and a little bit frightened. Lee asked why they were there, to which Ig replied by stating the obvious. Ig encouraged Lee to not make things harder for them, asking for him to come clean with his actions. Again, Lee tried to deny this, saying he could never do that to his friends. But Ig was firm in his decision, begging Lee to turn himself in. Before Lee could protest, Dale came and pointed his gun at him. Terry was also at the scene, distancing himself from the others. Ig asked why they were there, with Dale confessing that Terry told him everything. Dale then confronted Lee, accusing him of saying such lies about Ig. Feeling under the pressure, Lee continuously asked for their forgiveness. He tried to near Ig, but Dale shielded himself before he could. Lee could only admit his mistakes. Lee then proposed he would fix his mess, making the rest reassured. But he suddenly attacked Dale, taking possession of his rifle. He pointed it at the others, rendering them immobile. But Terry attacked him nevertheless, earning a bullet wound on his thigh. Ig then came to the rescue, attacking with his pitchfork. But when he maneuvered the rifle, it accidentally pointed at Dale, causing a big accident. Like the devil, Lee laughed at this, angering Ig. But before he could attack once more, Lee pointed the gun at Terry, asking Ig to back down. Being forced into a corner, Ig could only ask for Marin's forgiveness as he took off her cross. With this, he first transformed into an angel, flying him way clumsily up. But this didn't last long. Like a fallen angel, his wings burned, causing a pain scream from Ig. He later transformed into the devil, blazing and all-powerful. With this sight, Lee was petrified, afraid of what Ig was capable of. When he asked for forgiveness, Ig momentarily lost his focus. Lee took this to his advantage, attacking Ig multiple times with the pitchfork. Lava blood oozed from Ig's wounds, creating a satisfied grin to plaster Lee's face. What he didn't expect was Ig attacking him with his horns, like a bull charging at his target, piercing Lee and throwing him into a tree trunk. As Lee struggled to stand, in pain from his wounds, he could only stare at Ig and his wounds. Then, he saw a bunch of snakes fast approaching his location. Totally in pain, he could not move as the snakes slithered their way toward them. He was at the mercy of these reptiles, only awaiting his impending end. In his final moments, Lee could only endure the pain as these snakes dealt with him the rightful punishment he desired. Ig could only watch as Lee suffered. Slowly, his energy was depleting. Terry assisted the struggling Ig, motioning him to lie down. As Ig's body slowly cools down, so does his life. Terry could only witness as his brother slowly withered in his arms. In the end, Ignatius Parrish passed away that day. Like a fallen angel, he became the devil one last time in search of vengeance. Revenge was all-consuming, but he had no regrets. He was now free, and he had finally avenged the love of his life. Now he was together with his beloved Marin. They now were happy in their little paradise. As they passionately exchanged kisses, love was radiating from the two. Ig then vowed he would love Marin for the rest of his life, which she corrected, saying love her for the rest of hers. And with that, they sealed the deal with the most passionate kiss of all, vowing to never be apart, forever.